Let's go to federal politics now. I want to catch up with the Liberal Senator for New South Wales, Holly Hughes, who joins us live from Canberra. Good to talk to you, Holly.
Afternoon, Chris.
Looking on, as I have done from outside over the past couple of days, I'm struck by the fact that the Canberra bubble is tearing itself in knots in a very messy, untidy scene that is too, a lot of aggro, about issues that don't really matter to the people of Australia at the moment. I mean, honestly, the country's trying to move on from a pandemic. Most of the country's vaccinated, and we've got all this argy-bargy about vaccine mandates and religious discrimination laws where there's no examples of people being discriminated against.
The last 2 weeks of the sitting year. I mean, Chris, you used to work in this building. I'm sure you remember how...
I was smart enough to get out, Senator. I was smart enough to get out. You know. Well,
you know, probably because you remember what the last 2 sitting weeks of the year are like.
But you understand my point, don't you? None of this bears much relationship to mainstream Australian issues at the moment. It's very much a Canberra-centric political bubble sort of a debate.
Yeah, the religious discrimination bill was an election promise, and it's one that we would like to fulfil before the election. Michaelia Cash has done an absolutely outstanding job in putting this bill together. She really has managed to find a nice way through that's going to protect the rights. I had a couple of concerns, and I spoke to them in the party room earlier this week around you know, children at school that may be struggling with their sexuality, that they were not at risk of being expelled if they're in a faith-based school. Also, having spent time living in the country, I know there were some concerns from both the doctor or pharmacy perspective if you live in a town that only has access to one of those, and they had religious objections to prescribing or dispensing things like PrEP or contraception. So those things have been managed through the bill. It is a very important thing for some people. I agree with you. It's not something that everyday Australians or all Australians are sitting around the dinner table and talking about. But this is something that we promised that we would do. Michaelia has navigated her way through what could have been a very, very tricky bill and has done an outstanding job with it.
I think you've got to be careful, though, legislating these rights, and ordinarily we ought to be talking about paring back the Australian Human Rights Commission because it's been too interventionist. Instead, you're going to be adding to it. And the issue here is, while the theoretical issues are worthy of debate, we haven't had practical examples. In fact, we've seen in faith-based schools and settings that people have been fine with their sexuality. There haven't been... In fact, the only real example that stands out of someone being discriminated against is Israel Folau losing his sporting career, but nobody wants to defend that.
Yeah, look, it has covered a wide range of areas in this bill, but the protections have been put in there. I'm with you. I would like to see the rolling back of more of these sorts of legislations. I certainly don't support a Bill of Rights or anything like that being introduced in this country. But this was a campaign promise, and my understanding as well, it was actually something, I think, when Malcolm Turnbull was Prime Minister, he put up around the same-sex marriage debate. So it's sort of the last of that legacy.
OK, and also there was the move to have an inquiry, a Senate committee look at the ABC and SBS complaints processes. That's been overturned by a Senate vote yesterday. That seems a very, very worrying development, that an organisation like the ABC can basically get a political campaign going to stop it being scrutinised by the Parliament. Was that a problem with One Nation senators not voting? Or how did that get up? Because surely most of the Senate would want some accountability at the ABC.
Yeah, so I was what we call paired out for that one, so all the matching that happened. So I wasn't 100% sure who was in the room at the time. I was waiting out in the lobby for if there was another division. But I understand that One Nation didn't vote for it. I think Senators Rennick and Antic weren't there to support it. So those that have decided to encourage the politicisation of the ABC, to ingratiate themselves further and make sure they get positive runs on four corners, have voted to overturn that inquiry. I mean, I find it astounding, even today, if anyone's interested to follow Heston Russell and the way that the ABC has absolutely condemned a whole platoon of SAS soldiers in the most unbelievable and malicious way, and they won't even respond to him. So perhaps if they actually did things right, we wouldn't have to be having independent inquiries or inquiries into their complaint system.
It is a worry. Thanks for joining us, Senator.
Have a good night, Chris.